The light in the hall of mirrors fell like water, and Eva Rudneva understood that tonight the rich would stage a show in which only the pain would be real. At the charity ball, billionaire Laurent Bellman planned to announce his engagement to a young influencer and discard his wife so that every camera caught her face. Eva knew this kind of spectacle, first tears, then headlines, then a new contract. She knew one more thing. 1 year ago, she herself had written such a script for another client, for money, out of fear of losing her job. She had not forgiven herself, because that day she betrayed not only another woman, but also herself. Now at stake were her reputation, her consultant's license, her team of 3 assistants, and her rented apartment in Nice. But above all, the ability to look people in the eye, the ones who were weaker, and not turn away. She woke a little before the alarm. The room smelled of salt and book dust. She made an espresso on the small stove and stood by the window where the draft played with the curtain. On the table lay a battered black notebook with penciled notes. Ball, Maria 12:30, Nikita, compliance letter. Beside it was a piece of paper folded into quarters, the list of debts. The apartment loan pressed down like a wet towel on her shoulders. She took the white cotton gloves she used for handling documents. Her habit of not smudging paper with oil and perfume had become a kind of talisman. The gloves lay in her bag like a promise. Today she would touch the facts without leaving stains. She caught the number 100 bus to Monaco, took a window seat, and watched the sea, where the morning sun cut the waves into silver. Her phone vibrated in her hand. Nikita Strom was calling. "Where are you?" he said without a greeting. His voice was dry, as if each word had to pass through a filter. "On my way. I'll be at the hotel by 11, Eva said. "Do what you were paid to do and spare us the moralizing," Nikita said. "Tonight, we show generosity. Do not dare call it into question. You signed a non-disclosure agreement." "I signed a contract to be a human being. Contracts between people exist too," she said. Not anger, more like fatigue. It mattered to say it while he could still hear. He sighed. "You have a loan, you have a team. You can't afford a war with Laurent. Don't play the heroine. Heroes die." She hung up. Inside it was cold but steady. The fear was there, as always, but now it did not scatter in the dark. It stood in the corner and kept quiet. She knew why she was going. She was 31, the age when it is easy to justify any compromise. But today she had decided not to justify anything. The lobby of the Hôtel de Paris smelled of neroli and salt, the carpet springy underfoot. On the Place du Casino, the sound of the fountains slipped neatly into the pauses between the chamber orchestra's bars. At the front desk she saw Maria Ferrero, the hotel's manager and a former journalist. Maria always carried herself as if she could change the course of an evening with a single smile. "Thank you for coming early," Maria said, handing Eva a small glass of water. "The cameras are set up cleverly. They want to catch Camille's tears in a close-up. The light line on the stage hits exactly at eye level." "So someone made a plan," Eva said. "And not me," Maria said. "I can slightly change the order of speeches and the microphone, but if you start speaking, I won't cut your sound. That will be my price. I could lose my position, but I no longer want this hall to be a backdrop for a public beating." Eva nodded. "I'm not looking for a fight. I just don't want to keep quiet." She looked at the staircase already whispering with dresses, at the columns draped in white garlands. It was beautiful and cold, like a shop window. Maria said, "Camille is in the guest room. If you want, 5 minutes." The guest room was cool. Camille Bellman sat by the window holding a clear glass. Thin finger marks remained on the glass. She was neither broken nor strong. She was composed, like someone who had decided not to fall to the floor for someone else's entertainment. "Eva?" she said. "Yes," Eva said. "I don't know how much this will help, but I don't want to write anyone's fairy tales anymore." She did not say, "Stay strong," or "You'll get through this." Camille knew what to do. He brought the children, Camille said quietly. Anna and Maxime will sit in the front row. He wants them to see. He always does that. He shows he can do anything. Eva felt her throat go dry. That was what made this not a show, but an act of cruelty. "I'll try to change the frame," she said. Camille nodded. "If you can, don't leave them alone. They understand everything." Eva stepped into the corridor and pulled out her phone. She needed to check the facts once more. She had bank extracts for transfers to the offshore Bellman Charitable Trust, correspondence with the foundation's curator, the log of the private jet's flights, dates and routes that matched the media company's publications. She had a short letter from compliance about a conflict of interest, a dry one-page document. And one more thing. A contact for the foundation's former accountant who had refused to take part in the new scheme. He had agreed to write a few lines confirming the knowledge came from him. She reread the letter, put on the white gloves, and checked the flash drive. Her inner speech was simple. "If I do this, I lose contracts, but I stop being a tool." She closed the clutch. The sweat on her palms had dried. An hour remained before the reception. Nikita stood by the staircase, speaking quickly into his headset. When he saw Eva, his face became as flat as a board. "We start as planned," he said. First, a video about the school for gifted children, then Camille's speech, short, and then Laurent comes out with the announcement. You just shake hands and smile, stand in frame behind the journalists like we agreed. "I won't smile," Eva said, "and Camille's speech is canceled." "No one asked you," Nikita said, but his eyes twitched. He understood she wasn't joking. "Nikita," Eva said, "a year ago I wrote a press release that hid someone's dirt. I won't repeat it. Enough." He looked at her hands where the white gloves stood out. "You're taking a stand? For whom?" he asked. It wasn't a reproach, almost curiosity. "For myself," she said, "and for those who never get a microphone." He was silent for a second. Then he said, "When this starts, you'll be alone." "I already was," Eva said. "I just pretended otherwise." People arrived. Glasses chimed in the foyer, the orchestra warmed up, waiters carried little tartlets and oysters on trays. The Bellman twins, Anna and Maxime, stood with their governess in miniature tuxedos. They looked at the gilded program frame and said nothing. Eva caught the girl's gaze. There were no tears there, only the surprise of someone who had understood adults too early. Eva looked away and fixed the look in her memory, as a reproach and a point of reference. Maria gave the signal. The hall filled. Warm light lay across the stage. The first item was the video. Children, classes, drawings. Eva watched not the screen, but the faces. People smiled, nodded, pretended to believe in the evening's sincerity. Then Camille was supposed to speak, but she wasn't near the stage entrance. That was Maria's decision. They brought the microphone to the center of the hall, to where Eva stood. She felt her legs tremble, but her voice was steady. At the peaks of tension, the sentences shortened themselves. "Good evening," Eva said. "I'm Eva Rudneva. For years I wrote the right stories for the rich. Tonight, I'll tell a wrong one." People turned. The hall rustled. "What is she doing?" someone asked. "Security?" another said. Maria stood at the console, looking at Eva, one hand on the sound switch, but she didn't press it. Laurent smiled and stepped forward. "Ms. Rudneva always knew how to stage a drama," he said to the press. "Let's leave the speeches to the professionals." His tone was gentle, like a person stroking a dog against the grain. "Professionals make mistakes too," Eva said. "I've made mistakes. I covered for someone's betrayal. I wrote a text that turned pain into a plotline. That was vile. Tonight, I won't repeat it." She opened her notebook where dates were written in pencil. Here is the log of Mr. Bellman's private jet, January, February, March. Here are his media outlets' publications, same dates, with a narrative of changing personal life in the name of a new philanthropy. Here are wire transfers to an offshore trust through which the foundation's money moved, and here is the company whose ultimate beneficiary is the young woman we've seen in the society pages. Here's a compliance email about conflicts of interest. Never answered. Here is a short statement from the foundation's former accountant who refused to sign this. Slander, one of the lawyers said. Lies. You're breaching your contract. They spoke quickly, but the hall wasn't listening to them. It listened to the pauses between Eva's words. She took the white gloves from her clutch and put them on. It looked odd and honest. I will handle the documents carefully, she said. I don't want to dirty what should be clean. People murmured, but differently, not as an audience, as witnesses. Laurent raised his microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, you see how envy sometimes dresses up as morality, he said. Don't let small people ruin a big evening. Today we will announce a new era of philanthropy and love. He held out his hand, inviting Lila Moreno, the influencer with millions of followers, to step forward. She came out of the shadow in a glittering dress, too fragile in that light. Love is not a show, Eva said, and philanthropy is not a tool for humiliation. If you want to talk about generosity, don't start by discarding a wife in public in front of her children. She turned to Anna and Maxime. They are not set dressing. No one is set dressing. At that moment, Maria dimmed the stage light slightly and drew Camille's silhouette not onto the stage, but toward the children. Camille put her arms around their shoulders. The hall did not see tears in a close-up. It saw a family closing ranks. That frame could no longer be used against them. For a second, Eva felt the world even out. You want my facts? She said, short and sharp. In January, Lauren's jet landed in Zurich the same day his media pushed a new storyline about personal rebranding. In February, the foundation wired money to a company whose ultimate beneficiary, through 2 layers of trusts, was the same Lila Moreno. In March, compliance asked about conflicts. There was no answer. In April, this hall's lighting plan was changed so that Camille's tears would be visible to everyone. I carry the check for my last apartment payment in my bag because I don't have the luxury of forgetting about rent. I came here on the number 100 bus. I have 3 assistants who live on salaries, not percentages. And I have white gloves for documents because I don't want to dirty the truth. That's all. She spoke in short sentences because long ones got lost in the noise. Her heart pounded, but her voice did not shake. Last year I did something bad. I wrote a text that justified betrayal. I slept like someone who had burned a hole in her blanket. Today, I'm doing it differently. I'm losing contracts. I may be losing my profession, but I am not losing myself. The silence grew heavy. Laurent stopped smiling. He realized the script was slipping away. Do you think they'll applaud you? He said. Tomorrow I'll sue. Go ahead, Eva said. But first answer the children why you chose today. It struck not the legal plane, but the one he was used to ignoring, the human one. He looked at Anna and Maxime and turned away. The glasses stopped chiming. A few investors rose and left without a word. Nikita took off his badge and set it on the press table. Lila Moreno stood by a column staring at the floor. Her beautiful face was empty. She wasn't a villain, she was part of the set, and suddenly everyone saw it. The lawyers hissed, Ms. Ferrero, you are obliged to stop this unlawful address. Maria took the microphone. Dear guests, she said calmly, until circumstances are clarified, the speeches are suspended. The hall is closed to filming. I ask all journalists to deposit their cards for safekeeping. We will pause the event. It was the decision of someone who owned the space and used it to protect the living from a spectacle. Several cameras tilted toward the floor. Journalists from a trade outlet were already typing, but their tone changed. Not billionaires' new love, but ethical doubts and questions about foundation financing. The foundation's board convened in the next room. No one spoke loudly, but the social temperature dropped a few degrees. The show did not go on. Ava sank into a chair by the wall. Her fingers itched under the gloves. She wanted to rip off the latex, but she held still. Nikita came up to her. His face looked tired. "You stood against us," he said, "but you stood for me, too." "Don't," Ava said. "You choose where you stand." "I always stood aside," he said. "I thought it was easier that way." He looked at the stage where the light now lay without grandeur. "I don't know what happens next." "No one does," she said. "But now, we can't pretend we didn't see." Camille approached. "Thank you," she said. There were no hugs, no tears, just a simple sentence from an adult who had been spared an evening of humiliation. Anna and Maxime looked at Ava. "Can we go home?" Maxime asked. "Yes," Camille said. "We're going home." It was the evening's best decision. When the hall emptied, Maria took Ava to the staff kitchen. It smelled of coffee and metal. "I'll have to explain this to the owners," Maria said. "Will you lose your job?" Ava asked. "Possibly," Maria said, "but I won't lose my head in the mirror." Ava nodded. "Me neither." They drank espresso together, bitter and honest. Then Ava took her clutch, notebook, and flash drive and walked out onto the square. The fountains sounded just as they had that morning. The sky had darkened, but it didn't frighten her. The number 100 bus ran on schedule. Ava sat by the window. She thought about her team, about Sonia, who paid for her brother's classes, about Roman, who was saving to fix his old bicycle, about Tanya, who wanted to leave a tabloid and learn to write without filth. She would have to explain that they might lose big clients, but they would gain something else, the chance to do their work without lying. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Call the team. Write to Camille. Send documents to the foundation's compliance. Think about a new portfolio." Her handwriting was clearer. It was a new hand. Beyond the glass, the sea was still there. That night her phone rang. "This is Blanchard from the Foundation's board," a woman said. "We want a meeting tomorrow. We have suspended Mr. Bellman from any decisions pending review. We need your documents." "All right," Ava said. She felt no triumph, only relief, like when the ringing in your ears stops. On the second line, messages blinked, threats from a lawyer, an offer from a tabloid to sell the story, a note from an old client with one short line. "We thought you were that kind of person. We were wrong." She deleted that email. On the third line, a new one blinked. "We want to work with you. We need someone who tells the truth." For the first time that day, she smiled without thinking of the camera. Morning was clear. The apartment smelled of dust and the sea. Ava set a metal pan on the stove, cracked 2 eggs, and watched the whites set. She brewed tea. On the line by the window, white cotton gloves were drying. They hung like small flags on a tiny ship, not a metaphor, but an object that, in the morning, reminded her of yesterday's promise. On the table lay the folded list of debts. It had not disappeared. But next to it lay her notebook, and today it had more than 2 words of fear written in it. She took the first sip of tea and understood she would go on living, not richer, not easier, but freer. She opened her laptop and began to write emails. To her team, honestly, "We're losing money, but not ourselves." To Camille, without pity, "If it gets hard, call me." To Maria, "Thanks. You stopped the hall." To Nikita, short, "Take care of yourself." He didn't answer. She wasn't offended. Everyone was dealing with their own. An hour later, a piece ran in the trade press, "Philanthropy as a Tool of Humiliation, Questions for Bellman." The text was free of venom, full of facts. At the end, a note from an ethics advisor, "The rich forget that people are not a plot." It was strange and pleasant to reread. In the evening, when the sun dipped behind the buildings, Camille called. "The children are in school," she said. "They were scared, but they saw there's nothing to be ashamed of." "That's what matters," Eva said. It always frightened me how he loves an audience, Camille said. Today, he was left without one. That's a punishment, too. Yes, Ava said. What will happen to Laurent? Camille asked. I don't know, Ava said. That's not in my power. What is in my power is not helping him hurt people. She hung up and felt a hollow space, but it was a useful hollow. She could put something of her own there. Nikita wrote 2 days later. Got fired, he said without preamble. I'm sorry, Eva said. I took off the badge myself, he said. But they fired me anyway. I thought I could stay clean in a dirty room. You can't. You can walk out, Eva said. I'm scared, he said. And I'm tired. I'm scared too, she said. You can be scared and still go. It wasn't inspiration. It was a description of what they had. He didn't answer. Ava didn't wait. A week later, the Foundation's board released a brief statement. In order to preserve our reputation and transparency, we have initiated an independent audit. Pending review, Mr. Bellman has been removed from operational decisions. The papers wrote soberly. Lila Moreno disappeared from the society pages. It wasn't victory. It was a stop on request. Sometimes that is enough. Ava kept living. Mornings, espresso, and a croissant at the bistro on the corner. Days, emails, calls, meeting prep. She pulled an old bag from the closet, the one where she kept the white gloves, and added one more item, a small recorder. She decided to record meetings so she wouldn't again end up where words get flipped. She stopped wearing expensive perfume to meetings. The salty note in the hotel corridors stayed in the past as a reminder of the day when beauty stopped being a screen. Sometimes people asked, is it really worth it? The fear, the money, the threats? She answered without pomp, it is. Because she knew the price of the alternative, she knew how you sleep after betrayal, and she knew what it means to stand in a hall where light, sound, and money say, be silent, and still speak. Her words were not loud. They were short and direct. There were no gemstones inside them, only nails you can hang the truth on so it won't fall. She met new clients, not rich, but real. It sounded terrible in presentations, but in life it felt calm. She did what she knew how to do, explained how to speak without fake heroics, how not to use philanthropy as a screen, how not to turn people into background. She never chanted slogans. Instead, she showed the white gloves and told them about the number 100 bus. She said, if you're not ashamed of your roots, you won't need PR. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they thought. She was fine with either. She tried not to think about Laurent. His world hadn't vanished, but it had cracked. A slit had opened through which you could see that under the marble there was the same dust. Ava didn't rejoice in it. She simply took note. She was no longer a commentator on someone else's shine. She had become someone who sometimes says no, where that word is not welcome. One evening, Ava was walking along the promenade and saw Anna and Maxime with Camille. They were eating ice cream. They had the ordinary faces of children arguing about flavors. Camille noticed Ava and came over. They decide for themselves now where not to go, she said. They don't want to watch shows. They want to live. It's hard, Ava said. Yes, Camille said, but now we have the right to choose. They parted like people who had behind them not only a hall, but the day after. And that, perhaps, mattered more. Later that night, Ava went home, took off her shoes, and set the kettle on. The apartment's quiet was not empty, but warm. She took the white gloves from her bag and hung them on the line by the window. On the table she put the debt list, and next to it, a sheet of paper with plans. This doesn't erase the past, she thought, but it gives me a foothold. She wrote one more word in the notebook, I stay. And she realized she no longer needed big stages to prove anything to herself. The metal pan where the whites would set again in the morning was enough, the mug of tea, the gloves that would be dry by noon, and the route she had chosen herself. Her phone rang late. Maria. "Found a new job," she said without preface. "Another hotel. They don't like shows there." "Congratulations," Ava said. "You should congratulate me," Maria said. "I checked. The mirror's still in place." "Mine too," Ava said. "In the kitchen." They laughed. The laugh was short and quiet, but it was theirs. Sometimes she wanted to ask herself, what if no one had believed? What if she'd been thrown out of the hall to laughter? What if the investors had clapped? What if the children hadn't looked at their mother? But the answers weren't needed. It was enough to admit she would have said it anyway. Are there many moments in life when they hand you a microphone, put you under the lights, and you can say one exact no? It's not a feat. It's the work of a voice. She had learned not to outsource it. Since then, walking past shop windows with dresses, she didn't feel envy. Chandeliers didn't entice her. Tabloids didn't scare her. She knew their price. She knew hers. In the evening she washed the pan, set the mug back in place, checked if the gloves had dried. The sky over Nice grew dark, but the dark did not grow inside her. She sat at the table, reread her notes, and heard how, quietly and without applause, something had changed within. It didn't erase the past, but it gave her a footing where there had once been only polished parquet under someone else's heels and light that did not warm. Now her light was in the kitchen, and it was enough. She had remained with herself. That was enough not to fear halls or silence.